welcome to this week's episode of Who Doesn't Have a Podcast. I am joined tonight by the ever-dashing, the ever-hair free-flowing goddess that is Anita Dobson's Hairbrush, also known as Jerome. Hello, Jerome.
It's so good to be here. It's especially good to be here as Anita Dobson's Hairbrush. You know, it was my latest Eurovision entry. Didn't quite make the final 26, but you know, the band name has stuck and it's gonna stick for at least another week. But there we are.
What a week for Doctor Who. Crystal
What?
Palace wins in their first trophy in history, followed by Eurovision Who, followed by the UK not ending on nil point. A pretty successful weekend. Yeah.
A lot's happened. A lot's happened. Because not only did we get one bombshell reveal, which has been in the workings for a couple of years now, we also got another reveal, which I don't think many people were expecting. I know I certainly wasn't. I mean, it's been hinted at more so than in previous modern Who ever. But maybe we should start there before we get to the more obvious one. Susan, granddaughter Susan of the first Doctor, played by Carol Ann Ford, who has, I don't exactly know her age at the moment, but I think she's at a ripe old point, looking amazing. I haven't had a shock like that, like an actual insular breath moment for ages. Because she has been a character that has been long cried out for ever since she left, way back in, 1969? 1966, 1969, something like that. I mean, that's crazy. What was your reaction?
Well, the thing is, I did have to do a bit of Googling on this because, as you know, I'm not fully well versed in the history of Who.
Yeah.
But once I did put two and two together, I was pretty surprised that she was making a return, especially after such, like you said, such an enormous amount of time. And for newer Who fans, that is going to be a bit of it's going to be a certain surprise because we didn't fully know who it was to begin with. But for yourself as a legacy fan, how was that as a surprise?
Yeah, it was just amazing. Like, to kind of have that moment and to have it sort of tie in, because it wasn't really explained, but it just fit really well. I mean, I was a little bit worried at that particular scene. It felt very much like The Last Jedi, Leia Organa kind of, making her way back through space. I think it was a bit more, well done in this with the confetti cannon, but there was a little bit of me that was like, oh no. But it was just, it was just amazing to see her back, and like genuinely really exciting because there's scope for her. It's great that she's come back as her original character, but there's been so many questions for legacy fans as like, can Susan regenerate? Like, she spent so much of her time on Earth with her husband David. Like, she got married. That's part of the reason because she didn't actually want to leave the TARDIS. The Doctor leaves her behind.
Right.
Partly because I think he is of the opinion that he wants Susan to go off and live her life. But this raises so many questions, and I don't think I've got time to go through all of them now. But it goes through this whole thing of like, why, in terms of the dynamic, like the Doctor now is always gutted when a companion leaves, or finds it like a piece of him goes, or that him, her, or them goes missing, and it's like. But when Susan, like, he asked Susan to move on, like he got rid of Susan. So there's like a whole journey of the character there. And now that you've got the whole, where does the Doctor come from, the adoption? Because likewise, that means, where does Susan come from?
Yeah, of course.
Because it's like, because you've got the lineage there. And it's never really been explained. It's explained that they're related. And obviously, like, we'll remove the fact that from, 50, 60 odd years of Doctor Who, like, they definitely haven't just changed plot lines for the convenience of other plot lines. It's definitely not happened at all. But like, it's like, how just that relationship, like, why has he never gone back for her? Like, why? Is it guilt? Is it, like a darker secret? Is it whatever? So I won't spend too much time on it now. Maybe on another podcast we can really go into it. But I genuinely think the inclusion of Susan is fantastic. Like, I'm genuinely excited as a legacy fan that it's just because it asks so many new questions. And obviously, I'm sure if Mike was here, he'd be talking about the Timeless Child arc and Link and all that. So I'm glad to say that this series has really kind of won me over in terms of just the excitement. I want to come on to something else in a minute, but yeah, just talk about you, like with this series and that episode, and how are you feeling going into the final two-parter?
Well, again, I feel like I've been rejuvenated and a lot of confidence with Who because obviously from last season, I think we can all agree that it maybe wasn't as strong as we hoped. I think there were far more good episodes than we would have liked in the long run. But I feel like this time round, I feel like it's really found its feet, and I think to try something quite as ambitious as a Eurovision episode, particularly leading into the Eurovision Song Contest, is a stroke of genius.
Yeah.
Um, I think from a special effect point of view, it was one of these absolutely stunning episodes. The fact that it's only, is it the
Oh
second
yeah.
ever episode that's been shot entirely in a studio?
Wow. Really?
I think the only other episode this season was the previous episode. That was all studio based. So it's quite a rarity for Who, but I was very much blown away by the visual effects and the fact that they kind of got the nuances of the Eurovision Song Contest down to a T. The way they introduced Rylan, I thought that was absolutely hilarious. It was so
It
tongue
was
in
like, it was
cheek.
spot on, wasn't it? Just in terms
It
of,
was,
you can totally believe that Rylan would be crypto frozen. To
of
like,
course.
you would just,
And
everyone would just be like, yeah, of course.
yeah, and the beauty of it is as well that if you are a very casual or you've maybe never seen the Eurovision Song Contest, you weren't left in the dark. But it was kind of there was so many little nods to Eurovision fans that you kind of went, actually, it's a bit of fan service here. So I had a lot of respect for that.
I'd also quickly like to just correct myself. When I say crypto frozen, that was a brain just completely falling asleep on itself. Cryogetically frozen is what I meant.
Always good to crypto freeze, guys. The
It's
markets are a
always really
complete
good to
shambles. Protect
hashtag
yourself.
sponsor.
Yeah, some people use cash ISAs, other people
We're
very
not for a
simple.
moment suggesting that you should go down the crypto route. I don't even think there is a Doctor Who cryptocurrency yet, but
Speak
don't
with
do
an
it.
accountant.
Don't use it.
Speak with a well-versed accountant.
Yes, yes. If you have one, please let us know at Dan and Jerome needs good financial advice.
Jerome's backup plan at
yeah.
gmail.com.
Yes. One day Mike will
terms,
start paying us to do this podcast. Anyway.
so I thought right from the get-go, I thought they got the atmosphere down to a T. I love the sponsorship thing, which I don't know whether it was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing with Moroccan Oil, who are the main sponsor of the Eurovision Song Contest. I
Oh, I
think
did
it
not know
might
that,
have been
actually.
upon reflection. It's only something that's just popped into my head now because I was watching it with one of my friends who's based in Luxembourg, and we were on WhatsApp or just like live chatting about it for 2.5 hours. It's hilarious, and he made the point about it being weird that like a Moroccan oil company is the main sponsor of a very innocent Eurovision Song Contest. So I thought that kind of harvesting for the poppy oil or the poppy essence in this episode was quite an interesting comment upon society and the fact and the kind of corporate greed that we find a lot of these days. But I thought the biggest shock, aside from the ending, was the moment where Mrs. Flood not only kind of unveils her intentions, but the sort of this what was it called, Jerome? Kind of the canopy of the space station was released, and we saw all 100,000 attendees basically get sucked up into the atmosphere. That was probably one of the most haunting moments of Doctor Who I've ever seen.
That shot was beautiful. Like like the shot, I think it was like a blacked out triangular like pillar sort of thing, and it was like all the people rising through it. I don't know. This is completely irrelevant, but if you've ever played Dead Space, there's like moments of just bodies kind of rising through the air, like with that kind of imagery. And it just made it, I totally get you, like really haunting, really kind of like, just like horrifying to watch, but but you could also admire the beauty of it, just the way it had been filmed. And I genuinely, there were some shots in this where you could clearly see like this is where Disney really start to pull their weight around. And of course that will be interesting to see what happens with the future of the show, but we'll leave that for another day because that's a whole huge topic in and of itself. But I just before we get on to the ending, because I know that's what probably everyone wants to talk about, I actually if I had one thing with the episode, I was like, I did enjoy the fact it was Eurovision. Like I enjoyed the fact they kind of made it topical in that sense, and the placement of it. But I was also a bit like, I don't know, I felt like they kind of sort of went half-hearted with it. they kind of had the Eurovision thing, but then they didn't really. They sort of went whatever. Which I'll be
Yeah.
honest, I'm not that upset about. But I
Nah.
think, like, I know, I from talking to other people and kind of thinking about it, like it really kind of, it wasn't about that. And I know that some people would have liked to have seen more songs or music or kind of like maybe cheesy Who, which has a place, of course it does.
Yeah.
But but the thing for me was like, I'm talking about Susan. I'm going to talk about the ending and the visual shots, but like, I don't know if the episode landed on me, as in like the actual. So for me, like Freddie Fox's character and his like partner, I just didn't really get a sort of sense of meaningful threat. I mean, obviously I did, because it was to do with genocide and it was to do with kind of like why the doctor's so angry about that, you know, potentially being a thing. But I just felt like it was underdeveloped, because it was, again, we sort of come back to the 45-minute aspect of trying to fit everything into a show and into an episode, sorry, and do all these things. And I just felt like that, for me anyway, personally, that villain was undercooked, because it was a really interesting dynamic, and I think it would have been really interesting to have made more of the challenges between the Doctor and, I can't remember Freddie, it was Kid, wasn't it?
Kid,
like
yeah.
between the Doctor and Kid, and just to kind of work on that. But obviously, like, that is always going to fall secondhand to what was to come.
Yeah.
And
I think that you make a really good point with that as well, because it's not the first time this season where kind of the third act has kind of been where it's finally shifted into gear and kind of got into the kind of crux of what the episode's about. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I feel like they could have definitely played out the Eurovision thing more. It would have been nice to see different species, maybe cameos of characters that, or yeah, species that maybe we haven't seen in a while in Who. I thought that was like a brilliant opportunity for like Doctor Who purists like yourself to kind of get a bit of fun there. I I loved the kind of Wally reference of the Doctor basically taking their space confetti cannon and blasting his way back into the spaceship. I thought that was wonderful. Out to, and you're going to have to get this right for me, Jerome. The two Eurovision fans.
I want to say Gary.
Yeah, let's go with Gary. I'm sure that in the captions
Could be wrong about that.
TikTok, that'll be completely wrong, and Michael do me will sting me in the neck. But I thought that kind of dynamic between the Doctor and those two characters was absolutely brilliant. I thought there was such the humour there was really warm, and I really got on board with that.
Yeah, their level of humour was like really worked, but I think it really worked because, what did you make of Angry Shooty? Angry Doctor? Because it was really interesting to see the torture scene, because that was a shift. It was a real shift. And then obviously, like, the character refers to it at the end because he was like, I scared myself. And there's that idea. Obviously, he saw Belinda. He was doing all this because he thought she was dead and that he'd lost her potentially, and all of these things. And I just thought it was really interesting because I've referred to him for a while as like the therapy doctor. But again, to see this character with that anger and I'll always think back. I mean, it's interesting because obviously the one I think back to always is Family of Blood, with that Tennant episode where the character refers to him as like the fury of a Time Lord. It was so scary because he was so silent, and it was just like he was trying to protect us. And obviously, like, Shooty didn't go about it that way, but just in terms of the rage, the burning rage, you know, of like losing people. And I just thought it was really interesting to see that side to his Doctor. I just don't know, like, would the Doctor go that far as to physically torture someone? I mean, clearly he has done, but I just thought that was an interesting choice. It was a bold choice.
It was a very interesting choice, and I think as well, I think it's interesting to see the Doctor in that new light, because we've kind of seen the way he is with words, and it's kind of like a bit of an idle threat. But when he has that power and ability to seek revenge upon someone that, you know, almost ultimately killed him, that was a proper power play, or do you know what I mean? There was fury within that, and it was interesting to see, because that was our first foray into that, whether or not we will see more of that as the season pans out.
Yeah, because I wasn't.
But I feel like it was very good. But I thought that Belinda forgave him very, very quickly, considering how unbelievably cruel he was playing out.
Again, I think the thing that's annoying me the most is the trying to shoehorn too much into the time space because of the episode, because it feels like Belinda. I get it. There's got to be plot and you've got to move it, but Belinda's gone from not happy about this to want to get home to really want to get home to then let's stay, let's do all these things. I don't know. Maybe it's starting to jar a little bit for me, but I do enjoy their relationship. Like I do enjoy those two, like the chemistry between them. And the fact, like, I did believe as well that she was like, I've never seen this side to this person. Like, I also bought that because she hasn't. And I think that what was interesting is when we had that torture scene, I thought, and this is my way of shoehorning this character into this conversation, but I thought that was going to be the lead on to the Valyard at a point, because I was like, the darkness within that character, I thought that was almost going to be like a trigger thing for Mrs. Flood to be like, trigger, like this is almost like, because we'd gone along with some theories, hadn't we, about her being the Doctor, but maybe being an evil variant of the Doctor, and I thought, oh, maybe this is going to be like a, you know, kind of like the way in for her is that it's a bit like Luke and the Emperor. You know, it's like give in to your hate, give in to your anger.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because that's what's going to allow me to like take over. And I thought that would be a really interesting dynamic. But it wasn't the Valyard, Dan. Who was it?
It was the Rani.
Yes.
The Rani
What was
indeed.
your reaction?
Well, I've just pulled up a bit of extra information on the episode, and we will jump into the Rani in just a second. One thing I have noticed is that the writer, this was Juno Dawson, she pitched to Russell T Davies. She wanted to kind of do a Die Hard meets the Eurovision Song Contest, and I feel
Mm-hmm.
like up to a certain point they kind of achieved that. But like you
Yeah.
said, I feel like there was probably room, and probably due to the time constraints, they weren't able to explore that. And I think going forwards, that's maybe something that they need to definitely develop. But interestingly enough, and it's a fun fact for you here, did you know that of the aliens that appeared within the episode, many of them were costumes from earlier in the season that had been remodified by the costume department to appear as new species?
Wow, that's cool. That's a really cool
So they,
fact. I
rather
didn't.
than building completely new costumes, they basically repurposed old ones from the previous season, well,
That
and the previous
is
season.
also incredibly sustainable. Well done, who? Well done,
Well done,
BBC.
hey.
That's very good. The environment will be particularly happy with that one. No, that's a really awesome. I didn't know that. That's really, really cool.
Here's another fun fact as well. This was actually the highest in terms of overnight figures. This had the most of the viewing figures so far this season. So it
Yeah,
definitely,
it's
I mean,
interesting.
the feedback as well was really, really strong for this episode, which is again
Do you
probably
think
the
that's
first we've
because
seen of
it's
either.
before? Do you think that's because it was before the Eurovision Song Contest and people were like watching it because of that, or do you think that they just because it was Eurovision, people went, yeah, might check in?
Yeah, I don't know, because I had it on before Eurovision. I was kind of ready and raring to go to watch it live, because there was some, and maybe that's some disappointment, was that they were kind of hyping it up that something was going to happen in the episode, and then it would kind of bleed directly into the song contest. We were
Yeah,
also promised as well that Ncuti would read out the scores. Now we understand that last minute, due to some kind of illness or some kind of scheduling conflict, that wasn't able to happen, and Sophie Ellis-Bextor stepped in. And I was
yeah.
very disappointed at 11:30 when I saw her. Oh, well, I love her. She was actually someone that wished me good luck before I did the National Youth Theatre course. Fun fact. So I've got nothing but love for Sophie Ellis-Bextor, but I did expect there to be a bit more of a crossover. But we are detracting from the big breaking news of the episode, the Rani. Jerome, what the hell did you make of that? Expecting to see the Rani at the end of the episode.
I tell you the moment. It was as soon as she came out of just saw her in the red dress and the hair, which is kind of why I made the joke about the hairbrush. But there was an image of her before she went, has he gone? Is it safe? And she's like, the Doctor. And I was like, as soon as she said that, for some reason, I went, she's the Rani. I don't know. There was something about the imagery that sold it for me, and the fact it was just like this red. Because I remember, obviously, you probably won't be, well, you probably be aware, but you probably won't have watched it. The original Rani actress, Kato Mara, there was just certain imagery that I just kind of associated between her and Anita Dobson, but particularly Archie Panjabi, who I'll come on to in a minute, who is a great, I remember Bend It Like Beckham, unbelievable. Anyway, it was just amazing to see. And then obviously she was like, you know, lethal for a time lady, and you're like, here you go. And I think it's great. Didn't expect the bi-generation. Kind of
No.
glad. Great to see Mrs. Flood. I'll be interested to see, because I've already seen reviews from people. Some people are not happy about it being another bi-generation, in the sense they thought it was like a solo thing to the toy maker. But I'll be interested to see kind of how it links in, because the Rani is, I would say, more, well, obviously a Time Lord, but more than kind of like a, I don't know how you would define the Doctor and the Master, more than like a warrior, a general, a doctor, whatever. The Rani really, for me, falls under the branch of a scientist. Like, they are a scientist. And initially, like, when they were like first appeared in the 80s, she didn't there was no real like good or bad with her. Like, she would do evil things, but it was in the name of science rather in the name of, like, with regards to the master just wants to, you know, screw with the Doctor, and like has this burning hate for the Doctor and all these things, whereas the Rani is just more interested in their own agenda. So it'll be interesting to see how that links in. Like, did they have anything to do with bi-generation? Did they learn about bi-generation from it happening to the Doctor with the toy maker? Because obviously I assume now that Mrs. Flood was the one that picked up the tooth with the Master, and we saw the hand at the end. I assume that was probably her now. Yeah. And it's have they evolved the process of regeneration into bi-generation? Have they discovered the secret? I think it also links into the Timeless Child arc with the space babies. I think that's now legitimately probably a real thing. I thought it was great. I think both performers are very, very different. Archie Panjabi, straight, oh my God, like Kate O'Mara. It was like watching Kate O'Mara, like the way, even just the way she circled round and was like, unfortunately, yes. Like, there's just so much in her delivery. So I would recommend yourself, Mike, anyone who's not seen the original episodes, just go and watch like 10 minutes of like Kate O'Mara, because so much of what I saw Archie Panjabi do was so similar. Not similar, because they're obviously two different actors, they're doing different things, but just in terms of the presence that she carried was like instantaneous. It was great. I'm excited to see where this goes. I get the feeling though there's another villain in store.
A lot of Shamidi's made this point that, you know, they're being dubbed now as the Unholy Trinity, but technically the Rani counts as one character, as one person, technically. So it does keep the door open for another one of the Doctor's greatest to make a return.
Yeah.
Do you have any suspicions or predictions as to who the final person might
I don't know.
be?
It depends on what the Rani's done, because if it's sort of like the Utopia thing of like, was this the beginning? Is time out of order, in the sense of like the Rani's already put loads of things in place, but the trigger was like the Interstellar Song Contest, a bit like Utopia was for the Master. Turns out the Master's done loads of stuff up to that point. But that was the thing. They had to go into the future to trigger events of the past, and it's like. Really interesting. So I don't know. I've heard a couple of rumors. I'm trying to stay away from them as usual, but like, some people have mentioned Omega, some people have mentioned the Master. I don't know. And the gods aspect, like, has the Rani had something to do with creating the gods? Is she the boss that what's it called? Oh my God, in the 60th, the Meep was that the boss that the Meep was talking about? It could very well be. And was that theory of Anita Dobson wearing that furry white coat, was that the Meep? Maybe. Who knows, of the idea of skinning it alive. So I think there's still quite a few questions to be answered, because even though we've got some big reveals, it's left us with really more questions. Like, what's the Rani's plan? I assume we'll find that out in the next episode, but it's like, what's the Rani's plan? Why is Susan back? That for me is the bigger question. Because why now? Why now? Why in that moment? Compared to all the other why now? So that's a huge question. I don't know. I'm excited to see how it goes on from here, which is great, because I haven't necessarily had that feeling for a long time with Doctor Who. So to be at a point where it's like, I want to know what's going to happen, I want to know what's next, is great. It's a great place to be. And yeah, how about you? What are your feelings?
Well, again, I'm going in quite blind with the Rani and all these characters as well, so maybe it's going to be worth this week just rewatch or watching these earlier episodes to get a bit of extra context.
Mm.
But I think it's going to be interesting to see how these final 3 episodes play out now, because normally you have these sort of major plot twists a bit close towards the end, not 3 episodes from home, if you like.
Mm.
So I think now we're really going to get a major build-up now to the reality war.
I know Mike was the one who referred it to like Utopia, in the sense
Yeah.
of having that 3rd episode reveal, like 3rd last episode, and then you've got the 2-parter. And it does feel like Russell's gone down that sort of, you know, tread again, which is good because it works, right? It gets you involved, and yeah, it's amazing. Interesting to see as well by generation how the Ranis, I mean, this smells of betrayal. This smells of, like, you know, the Rani treating a Rani like poo, and and them getting like fed up with it. Because I don't know, there's a preview that's been released. I don't know if you watched that. A preview of the 2 Ranis, and you know, Anita Dobson's Rani is like, you could argue, just putting it out there, that you're like the sperm of my loins, and Arch Punjabi's like, that's disgusting. Get on out of here. So it's interesting because obviously the Doctor really embraced the Doctor. Do you know what I mean? Like 14th and 15th, like, could not be more happy to see each other. And the Doctor is kind of like, you know, kind of learning or evolving or changing. Like, there's so many funny dialogues between each of the Doctors. Like, or like, I'll always remember Peter Capaldi's lines, I'm not going to tell you anything about this because I know you've not seen it. There's an episode with Peter Capaldi where he basically says to someone, he says basically like, remember where you parked, it's going to come up a lot. And it's just very funny.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how that happens and whether the betrayal happens, and yeah.
And there's another interesting thing actually that we've, in amongst all the madness of that, we've overlooked as well.
Please go ahead.
Which is, of course, the fact that the Doctor and Belinda, they learned from a hologram of Graham Norton the fate of the Earth. So we find out in the episode the Earth was destroyed on the 24th of May, the day that they've been unable to return to. Now they're able to travel to that date at last using the Vindicator. We heard those ominous sounds from within the TARDIS. It went bright red.
Yeah.
And then we saw the explosion blowing the TARDIS doors.
You were only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
All right. So where do you think that leaves the Doctor and Belinda? Do you reckon it's going to be, the Wish World is going to be kind of like a suspended reality that the Ranians have kind of created to kind of save the Doctor from that moment? Or
I haven't
are we
considered
going to
that. That'd be
see?
interesting. That'd be a plot twist.
Because the only thing I've noticed as well, the BBC have released a few sort of teaser images, which I'm sure Mike will throw into this when he puts it on. But apparently this week, the BBC aren't going to sort of announce or unveil any more info on the episode. They're just letting the images do the talking.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder whether Wish World is going to be more like an alternate reality that they get sort of warped into, and the reality war is going to be them maybe breaking away from that and trying to save Earth, and it's going to have that sort of 2-part repercussion. Or how many episodes we got? Is it Wishford and then the reality war? Is there one in between?
It's just those 2 left.
It's just those 2 left, isn't it? So I don't know, because from at least from the images and from what we've been teased so far,
I think it's good that they're not spoiling it. I think it's good to allow people. We know a couple of things. We know Conrad's coming back. We know that Ruby is going to be involved, I believe, in both episodes. I think it's kind of set on a nice poise as to like where you go from here, because obviously like everything feels very meta. Feels like the Rani's done a lot as well, because you think of all the things that happen, like the 3 fans in Lux. Like there's so many different like meta aspects, like the fact that the creature got out, you know, and left on an open ending. There's so many things that have kind of been in play, or like the space baby appearing in the so have you seen that? I don't know if you watched it yet.
I have not. I'm guessing that'll give me a bit more context.
So there is one scene that will give context. So basically we see a space baby and everyone's like, what? So obviously there's stuff going on there, you know?
Right, okay.
But I look, we're probably going to have to wrap this up in a second.
Yes.
But I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Okay. I know 2. I'm going to try and think of the 3rd one by the point I get to it.
Okay.
Number one, we'll try and make these yes or no's, but I will let you expand if need be.
Right.
Is Ncuti going to regenerate?
On the basis of a rumored leak that I may have accidentally seen on Twitter, yes.
Is Susan going to physically appear in one or both of the next 2 episodes?
Yeah, but I'm going to say yes, but that's just because I've stumbled upon this 2-sentence brief for Wish World. I don't know if you've seen it yet. So the caption is currently this: traps are sprung and old enemies unite as the Doctor and Belinda finally arrive home to find a very different world. Can the Doctor see the truth before midnight arrives?
Ooh.
So
And we know this.
I'm going to take a punt and say yes.
Okay. And where do you think Doctor Who goes from here? As in, after the show will take a break, do you think it will just be a series of spin-offs like Land Between the War and the Sea? Do you think maybe there'll be a completely no one saw this coming fugitive Doctor series that's been in the mix apparently, or Paul McGann finally getting a series? We can but hope. But like, where do you think it goes, or do you think there will be a third series on the way and it just hasn't been announced and it's all a bit meta?
Oh God. I mean, me and Mike did have a proper conversation about this not too long ago. I think the war between the land and the sea will definitely open it up, and I think that will provide the springboard for more spin-offs. Because the episode before last, it seemed like a bit of a mini advert for the war between land and the sea. From what I've allegedly read, and there is some rumor, and if you have come across this, and I'm so sorry, on Reddit that someone has apparently leaked details about the finale. I've literally only seen one very small caption of it on social media, but the rumor is that we might be getting a female Doctor again, and potentially an actress who has previously appeared in some capacity in Doctor Who. So it could
So
be a previous companion, it could be a previous character, it could be the spirit of the TARDIS, it could be there's about 5 or 6 different shortlisted options here. But it's quite telling that they've reshot the finale with a regeneration.
so
You wouldn't
I
go to that effort if you weren't gonna potentially bring someone in, unless that is Russell T Davies throwing a major springboard. He's maybe been the one leaking it throughout the entire season, been very meta, and it's all smoke and mirrors, and we are going to get a third season.
so I think that I haven't looked at any of these rumors because I always try and stay away from them. I tried so hard. No, it's fine. But for me, something that I was considering, so I was going to ask these 3 questions back on myself. I would have said no, there's not going to be a regeneration. However, if there is going to be a regeneration, then I think one of 2 things happens. I think either it's a bit like when David Tennant was going to regenerate before he used his hand, and it like ended on the regeneration process, in the sense that it gives them time to basically stop the show for a while and decide where they want to go for it next. Or I think the more likely option is, I think if there is going to be regeneration, Ncuti regenerates into Joe Martin, who is the fugitive Doctor. I think that's probably what happens. You've spoiled something for me. I'm going to spoil something for you. No, we've seen Joe Martin before in other episodes, and there have been links about a time will come where maybe my story will be told. And I think that is kind of drawing towards the possibility that it could be sooner than expected. I think that Susan will appear, undoubtedly, but I think it might be. But I just want to know in what capacity, like how. That's what I want to know. I'm desperate to know that. And then there's the other one is I think the show possibly might take a break for a bit. I mean, it definitely will, because we haven't even heard, confirmation of filming or whatever. I think it will probably take a break. I think there might be a trailer for the Land Between the War and the Sea at the end of the series. I think there'll be something to be like, this is what's next, but it's not going to be Doctor Who direct. It's going to be like stuff that's off it, and then who knows? I don't think there'll be a Christmas episode. I think it will just be stuff to keep us going. But either that, or inevitably Russell kind of goes to CBBC and brings out a K9 series. Something like that's going to happen. We'll see. I would love to see K9 back in Doctor Who, by the way. Just putting that out there. I think it's time.
I think it's about time, because the Whoniverse has kind of been teased now for the best part of how many years? Is it about 2 years now?
2 years, yeah.
2 years. So I think they need to start expanding it. But again, if we are being led to believe that the whole Disney partnership might no longer be a thing, is it going to be viable for the Beeb to achieve that? Maybe they need to take some time away. And maybe because there's been such a huge gap in filming, like you said, it's not as if there's already something that's in motion and there's pre-production and stuff like that. There's nothing going on. They've already shut and sold off parts of Bad Wolf Studios. So we don't know kind of what the master plan is in the long term. It will be interesting to see as a result of the finale where we go from here. And I think you're right. I think because they've already wrapped filming, haven't they, for The War Between Land and Sea? That's kind of ready to go. I think it only be a sensible thing to keep momentum going. I don't think we'll be waiting as long for that as we have between Who's. I think there might be, if there's no Christmas special, I think we'll maybe get in the autumn The War Between Land and Sea instead as kind of a bridge.
Maybe. Yeah, possibly.
Which would be quite cool. Yeah. It's gonna be an interesting.
It's exciting. I'm excited for it. That without a shadow of a doubt, I am well excited for it.
Your score out of 10 for the Interstellar Song Contest, what would you give it?
You know what? Me and Mike were talking about this last week. I don't feel like I can give a score, honestly, because who am I?
That's such a cop out.
Who am I to I'm not a writer. I can't I can say.
Opinion. Come on, you've done 3 of the episodes. Come on. Jerome, Anita, Dobson's Hairbrush Dowling. If you could rate this out of 10 on your first view, what would you give it? No hesitation. 3, 2, 1, go.
I enjoyed the episodes, but I feel like I enjoyed the big moments more than the episode as a whole. That's my answer.
You're hesitating.
That's my answer. So I enjoyed the show. It would be middle ground for me somewhere. It'd probably be like a 7.
A 7.
But I really enjoyed the big reveals because I think that's what it was about. I just felt like maybe other elements of the episode were undercooked. But ultimately, it doesn't matter because they were all built up to those moments anyway. So yeah. I'm enjoying it, man. I'm enjoying the series. And I'm excited to see how the 2-parter pays off. And I think they're slightly longer in general as well. I know you're dying to tell me what you would score it, Dan. What would you score it?
I would give it 7.5.
7.5.
A solid 7.5. I feel like the middle bit kind of got a bit slodgy and it could have been expanded upon a bit more. Would I say it's as good as
Space Babies?
Definitely. Would I say it was as good as, oh God, what was the podcast one called? Lucky Day? Probably not. I really, really liked Lucky Day.
Okay, cool. Interesting as well. That was a Dr. Light episode, but they can be really good. They in the past,
of course.
Classic.
So I would think I'd give it a solid 7, maybe a 7.5. 7.5. I feel like, but I feel like, interestingly enough, I've not given an episode this season anything less than a 7.
Yes.
So I've really quite liked what I've seen so far.
Yeah, same. Really same. And I think there's definitely like positives to take the show forward. So we'll see. I mean, 60 years in, I mean, you don't just do that, do you? No. Anyway, look, we're going to call it there. Hopefully Mike will be back with us next time, and I'm sure we can get his opinions. I will come back with more Rani trivia as well, because I think that is a character definitely worth exploring a lot more. And yeah, until then, we'll see what the future holds. I'll tell you something, actually, one thing I will say. There's one thing that really gets me upset watching Doctor Who, that makes me actually like invest more in a TV show than I should than, I don't know, real life. And it's genuinely when damage occurs to the TARDIS. I don't know why I get so upset about it, but whenever I see like something happen, or like, I think that's one of my reasons, like my favorite episode is The Doctor's Wife with House and Matt Smith and the whole idea of the TARDIS being put into a human body. I just think, for me, it's the most magical element of the show. Just the idea of a police box in space that materializes and dematerializes, and it's just a beacon of like whenever it lands, it's iconic in itself. So when I saw those TARDIS doors like blow open, it almost felt like, you know, I was losing a friend in front of my eyes. Like, you know, I was like, I don't care. I was like, you can regenerate. You can like, you know, screw off and have a single tear while you're having a death. I was like, do not touch my 1960s blue baby. I was like, how dare you? Anyway, I'm gonna leave it on that.
Let's wrap it there.
Want the final word, Dan?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, let's wrap it up there. Let's see, let's see what Wish World contains. Thank you very much for joining us for this week's episode of Who Doesn't Have a Podcast. If you'd like to get involved in the chat, please keep us posted with your comments and any opinions you might have for indeed this episode and indeed the rest of the series. Follow us on Who Doesn't Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and all the other social medias. We'd love to hear from you and let us know what you think as well. But until the next time, it is goodbye from Anita Dobson's Hairbrush, which
Goodbye.
he actually does need now. It's gone. It's just gone completely
I
free world.
I feel like Anita Dobson's Hairbrush is going to become a fan favorite. Might be getting a cameo. We'll see.
We will see. I've been Dan, and Mike's not been here. But we'll see if he joins us next week. Thank you very much, and